Hello, folks, and welcome to the Power of Zero show. This is David McKnight, best-selling author of The Power of Zero, Look Before You Lerp, The Volatility Shield, and Tax-Free Income for Life. If you're looking for any help navigating all of the pitfalls that stand between you and the 0% tax bracket, head over to davidmcknight.com. We will connect you with a member of our elite POZ advisor group, among the very best advisors in the nation. When it comes to tax-free retirement planning, trained, vetted, qualified personally by me. If you are a financial advisor looking to level up your game, head over to powerofzero.com and opt into our free three-part video series. Happy to connect with you. Schedule a call at any point during that video series. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, I like to post new articles, updates, commentary on what's happening in the retirement planning world. It's at McKnight & Co, at McKnight & Co on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram, David C. McKnight, David C. McKnight. Okay, today you're going to listen to the second half of my interview with Rebecca Walsor. If you listened to the first half last week, you're definitely going to want to listen to that. You're going to see that Rebecca Walsor and I are very much of a like mind on all things retirement planning. So if you want a confirmation, a corroboration of everything that I talk about in all of my podcasts, have a listen to what she has to say. She's very articulate, very bright. You can review her bio from last week, but just a terrific interview. So sit back, relax, take a listen to the second half of my interview with Rebecca Walsor. Just as a quick plug here, my next book, it's a work of fiction. It's a novel. It's called The Infinity Code.
Nice.
It's a Dan Brown type thriller suspense novel that
Nice.
where a couple of protagonists are Stanford sophomores catch wind of a plot by Harvard graduates from 1985 to foist MMT on the country once one of them gets elected, and so they got to race against the clock. They have to try to expose the members of this cabal and do it before one of them gets elected as president. So that's coming out in the next couple months, and I sort of categorically repudiate modern monetary theory and all of its ilk. It's the one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that there's sort of this fork in the road here. We can either take MMT or we can stick with the classical approach. But what most people don't realize is that either road leads to higher taxes, and here's why. We know that if we stick on the traditional path, that eventually the costs of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid are going to drive debt to the point where we have to raise taxes just to be able to service the debt. But if we go to the modern monetary theory and we simply explode the debt because we always have the ability to print money to pay for the debt, what's going to happen is interest rates eventually will go so high that people will stop buying our debt. The cost of servicing all this debt will be so exploded that we'll have to revert to traditional classical economic alternatives to bail ourselves out, and that means raising more revenue to be able to pay the interest on all of this exploded debt. And so a lot of economists think that even if we were to adopt modern monetary theory, tax rates will eventually shoot through the roof. So whatever road you take in life, higher tax rates are in the future. So let's talk. You spent a significant portion of your book talking about life insurance. You talk about what I call the LIRP, or life insurance retirement plan, in my book, The Power of Zero. You talk about life insurance as the golden child of the U.S. tax code, and this is something that flies in the face of traditional mainstream investing. Why are you so high on life insurance?
Well, I think from a perspective of tax law, it is the only asset class that we can have both income tax-free, estate tax-free, and access it still during our lifetime, and that is a combination of 4 different tax law provisions, David. So that's why it is the golden child. We don't have any other asset class that has so many tax provisions specifically arranged around it. You might say farmers with their extra 10 years when they die to keep the farm and pay the estate tax over time. But, as far as mainstream vehicle that is used usable by every American in a very easy capacity, life insurance by hands down is the most tax favored 101A, 7702. I mean, there's just so many different sections. And so, Congress is waking up to this fact though. And we saw that this year with this regulation 7702 that really, made life insurance. It's still a great tool, but if we compare it to what we could have done pre this year and the regulations, and it's interesting not to go into the weeds here with your audience, but what Congress was trying to do, I believe, was really bifurcate. Okay, these are true just insurance-based contracts from more investment style contracts, but the insurance company wasn't prepared to really do that, right? So all insurance companies basically said, no, we're still going to design our policies exactly the way we've been designing them. We're just all across the board universally going to have a lower death benefit and lower cash available. So the contracts don't look as lucrative, and specifically talking about an IUL-based contract as what we were looking at before. Whole life has got its own problems with the interest rates being so low, and that's a whole nother thing that, bonds, I think Wall Street is finally starting to recognize that bonds are not going to be the yang to the yang of equity because the rates are just too abysmally low. And I used to be one of those people that believe rates would normalize in 2009, went through quantitative easing. I thought rates will normalize. Once Corona happened and we spent $8 trillion, I've given up on rates normalizing for the next 20 years. And that means that I know rates will have to stay low. They must stay low. We won't be able to afford to raise them because we use our own debt that we issue to pay back existing debt that we already have issued. So there's no room for rates in the next 20 years to normalize. When I say normalize, I'm talking about rates that are in the 5 to 7% normalized range over the history of America that we've had, CDs that way. And we're not going to see that with the debt level that we have. So life insurance becomes that planning tool that we can leverage from both an estate tax perspective to be completely out of the estate with advanced planning, ILETs, those kinds of things. And then for the average Joe who is looking at a tool that they're not so happy about, maybe market volatility, or maybe, and I talk about this a lot, David, I like my clients to build a parallel wealth track. Maybe they have a business and they know that business so well, but everything's in the business. Here's the parallel wealth track over here that can have tax control within it, where we cannot have that be so exposed to the risk of the business. Maybe you're a real estate investor and you have a big real estate portfolio. Okay, well, real estate is under attack by this administration. They want to eliminate the 1031. They want to eliminate the step up at death. These are all things, I promise you, as a tax attorney, that are coming because they must, because we cannot afford the country we've created. See, we have had this benefit of being a baby country and not having a lot of debt since one of our most recent presidents, Reagan in '86. Right when we started to really, we went off the gold standard completely under Nixon finally, and we started having the ability to debt finance. So we've only been doing this for like the last 40 plus years, and we have gone hog wild crazy with it. So now we have backed ourselves into a corner where, with the retirement of the baby boomers, which is the largest demographic shift in the history of America, and it's massive. We're talking about 65 million more people coming out of the workforce and going on to Social Security and Medicare as they rightfully are entitled to do in the next 7 years. This is happening now. We are here. It is finally time that we pay the piper. And so all of these things are coming where real estate is under attack with the 1031, the step up at death. I have all of these real estate investors that think they've got it all figured out. And I said, until you don't, because they will change this, they will change this, they will change that. So we've got to have this parallel wealth track that is tax controlled under the tax code. And a lot of people say, and I know you get this all the time, well, what if the laws change? And what if this happens? And what if that happens? And will they, and you guys, the laws will change, and they are changing. They're realizing that insurance is such a tax haven that they are trying to change it without even changing it through regulation. They're trying to change it with 7702 this year. We're seeing it before our eyes because they're realizing we have got to pull every nickel, every penny, every dime out of every nook and cranny in this country. And so they are trying to do it. But the great thing is, if you leverage life in these last, all of these years, you're grandfathered. Your policy's grandfathered. It's going forward. So we have had tax law changes with the insurance code, but it's always going forward, which means if you have taken advantage up to this point, good for you. And if you haven't yet, it's not too late, because there will come a time, David, where we will not get the benefits that we're even getting now because we just cannot afford to do it anymore. We are becoming finally an aged country with an aged population, with aged social welfare systems that we have to pay for. And one thing I want to be very clear with people that they don't understand is you go out and you have educated, audience, and they will go and read an article, and the article will be written by an economist, and the economist will say, well, the trust fund will run out in 2030, the $3 trillion trust fund. And I just want to be very transparent. I wrote an article for Fox Business in 2018 talking about Social Security. There are no dollars in the trust fund, zero. The $3 trillion that people refer to, that economists refer to as the trust fund, that money has all been spent. There was a Supreme Court case that, a citizens group sued the government for saying, hey, they're using the Social Security dollars for bridges, for roads. They're using it for all this stuff. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled that Social Security is a tax like any other tax. And it can be used by the federal government for any purpose like any other tax can be used. However, it and Medicare have separate accounting. So you have a trustee report, you have separate accounting. All that means is the government has to write something called an STN, a special treasury note. So what the government does is they go into the Social Security Trust Fund, they pull out real dollars that have come in through payroll taxes, they spend it on whatever, and they write an STN. And the STN says, when the requirements for withdrawals, disbursements exceeds the current tax, payroll taxes coming in, when there's a deficit, then we, the federal government, guarantee that deficit to be met up to the amount of the trust fund, $3 trillion. So all that we have are IOUs that the federal government has promised to honor up to $3 trillion. And that's what we're talking about, the trust fund being used up. So that is why it's so disingenuous for economists to write that the trust fund will last until 2030, 2035, 2040, because they know that that is the federal government raising those funds. And as you mentioned, there's two ways to raise them. We print more debt or we raise the tax. Those are our two, cut some things, but okay, so three ways: print more debt, raise the tax, cut some spending that we already had going. Those three things are the combination, but there is no dollars in the trust fund. And so this is why this shift from demographics, from baby boomers working to baby boomers fully retired, we have known since the 70s was going to be the singular event that would send America into European taxation. And we've done nothing about it. We've kicked the can down the road, and now it's here, and we have to deal with it.
I thought that the reason they called it the trust fund was because we could trust it. Are you telling me that's not the case?
Not the case.
Okay. I would like to commend you for one other aspect of your book, which warmed my heart. A lot of people like you and me, who feel like life insurance can play a role in a well-balanced approach to tax-free retirement. There's a lot of people out there who will denigrate all of the other potential streams of tax-free income to the exclusion of life insurance. I always tell people that if all you ever talk about is life insurance, you look like a life insurance salesman, and nobody wants to hand their life savings over to a life insurance salesman. My heart was warmed to see that you approve of 401ks up to the match. You approve of Roth 401ks, you approve of Roth IRAs, you approve of Roth conversions, and that very much is in keeping with what I call power of zero principles, that we should have an approach that adopts multiple streams of tax-free income, none of which show up on the IRS's radar, but all of which contribute to you being in the 0% tax bracket, or as close to tax-free as possible in retirement, right? As much as your situation allows. So it was gratifying to see, like I said, a kindred spirit who espoused taking advantage of all of the nooks and crannies in the U.S. tax code so that we can, grow our wealth in a way that shields us from the impact of rising tax rates over time. You talked about an annuity as a pension emulator. Can you tell my listeners what you mean by a pension emulator?
Yeah, I think that people have, a bad and I don't know where it doesn't, I understand where it comes from. I mean, you and I both know that annuities did have some issues, and that a lot of families thought, oh, this is a really bad raw deal that we got. And then that reputation sort of has stayed. So I will say that where I love to leverage an annuity is using a Roth IRA, because we have access now. See, that's the thing, is people don't realize that financial asset classes change over time. And I would say over the last 20 years, the most innovation has come through the Roth and annuities specifically, and really more on the growth side. So, I'm not a huge fan, unless I have a very unique set of circumstances. I'm not a huge fan of leveraging income annuities necessarily, because, that takes a pile of cash and really turns it into an income stream, sort of the equivalent of annuitizing, only we usually use riders, income riders, to do that. These days, we don't really annuitize contracts anymore. But I'm not a big fan of taking a pile of cash and creating a lifetime income stream, unless I have a situation where I have a client who we really feel is going to really struggle to maintain their income for the rest of their life. And then that makes a perfect, use for that particular vehicle. But I would say that I'm a real big fan of getting Roth money into a growth-based annuity, because the ingenuity that has come the last 20 years around growth-based annuities, what these contracts are doing, very similar to IUL contracts, David, is they are going out and they're buying call options on something, whether it's the S&P 500, whether it's an ETF specifically, depends on that specific contract, right? But we're able to get a client in a tax-controlled, Roth environment, the ability to have upside growth with zero risk of loss. So we're getting a downside protector, which is huge, because I can tell you, I've done the math analysis every way to Sunday 1,000 times for people. And it is the downside that kills retirees. It is the downside that makes you run out of money. It is the downside that people don't plan on. We can plan on a 4% mediocre return for the rest of your life. And as long as we avoid the downside, you win. You win that war. You win that battle. People don't get it. They are so trained in the Wall Street mind of chase, return, chase, return, chase, return, that they just don't understand that there is a peak. There is a point of life where you move from accumulation into distribution, and distribution rules are different than accumulation rules. And this is why the advisor that you worked with for 20 or 30 years that helped you build this nice big portfolio might not be the guy who's going to take it home for you for the rest of your life. Just like any other, we change doctors as we get older. We go see older specialists who are specialists in bone density and all of these things. We see hormone specialists to deal. We change throughout our life what we're physically going through, but we somehow think we need to stick with the same advisor who is an accumulation-based advisor. And we don't understand why that person isn't giving us a written income plan, why that person isn't talking to us about taxes, because now we have to pay them while we're retiring. We just don't get it, that this is just a different skilled set person. And you really are looking more of a distribution advisor once you've accumulated all this, who can come up with a plan to help you maintain it, to avoid losses, but also has a tax strategy and a tax plan integrated into everything, because it's not just about what we've built, it's about where we built it. And that's even more important.
Well, in my book, Tax-Free Income for Life, I talk about the importance of, if you're going to do the annuity, don't be like 98% of the financial advisors who recommend annuities. And that's recommending it within the tax-deferred bucket, where you're exposing yourself to tax rate risk. I mean, you're even if you did do a guaranteed lifetime stream of income, if you do it out of the tax-deferred bucket, your pre-tax amount of income is guaranteed, but your after-tax amount of income is not guaranteed, and that's the rub, right? And not only that, but it counts as provisional income, can cause Social Security taxation. When you position, in many cases by way of that internal Roth conversion into the Roth IRA, only certain annuities allow you to do that. So you get it into the Roth IRA, then all of a sudden you're shielded from tax rate risk. You're shielded from potentially from taxation on your Social Security. So Rebecca, you are the 2% that I talk about who actually discuss housing your annuities within your Roth IRA. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You are in the vast minority of financial advisors. So
yeah.
as we close up here, what else are you working on? You wrote Wealth Unbroken back in 2017, right?
18. It came out in 18, but yeah, I wrote it in 17. You're right. Yes, for sure.
What's next?
That was a project of love. I have another book that I am starting to form in my mind, but it's not quite ready for announcement yet. I do think there is a book I'd love to write, because I've worked with so many high net worth families now for so long, and one of the recurring themes that happens over and over, and I feel for people, because I go through this situation myself with my own family, is when you come from humble beginnings financially and you really make it, and you bring children into that mix while you're making it, there's this constant theme of the children becoming they don't have what we had, which was the drive, the ethics, the work ethic to understand what it really takes to become successful, because they're walking into success. So I think there should be some guidelines that I have been able to glean over the years, working with a lot of high net worth people and their children, and seeing where the money goes and what happens, to sort of really deal with that on the front end, because we want to give our children a better life, but we don't want in the process to quench their natural, innate, God-given desire to make something of themselves. And that's where the balance is. How can you give them something more than what you had, but not quench their God-given innate desire to make something for themselves? Because we all need to be challenged. And you see so many wealthy people's children becoming, going the wrong way, becoming addicted to a substance or something, because they just don't have an outlet for their individual need to become something. And so that's a book I'd love to write, but I don't think that's going to be the next one. I think there's going to be something else, just not exactly sure. But, I think right now, David, what I'm looking forward to is our country is about to go through some of the biggest things it's ever gone through. And I really look forward to us as a country coming together. There's a lot of reasons that we could find to be divided. The way our country started, a lot of the atrocities that happened at the very beginning and all the way through many, many years of our history. But this world is moving ahead without us. China is gung-ho on making America fall as fast and as hard as it can. And this is something that they put in writing with their Belt and Road Initiative. I mean, in this program that I'm in, I was in Dubai with a vice premier of China, who basically said in open forum that China's coming for America, and it's over for America. It's very hard to be in a global executive MBA program as an American and hear somebody say that to you with authority, like it's happening. So we better hurry up in our country and figure out how we can all get along, because at the end of the day, the world is coming after us. They are tired of us being the world reserve currency. They are tired of us being able to spend $3 trillion a year that we don't collect in taxes simply because we're the world reserve currency. They are tired of our position, and they want to come for us. So we have got to join together, figure out how we can put our differences behind us, because if we stay divided, they're conquering us is a foregone conclusion. It's just that simple.
This is a great opportunity to bring up David Walker's recent book, which is entitled America in 2040, subtitle Still a Superpower ? And he talks about the sort of the four hallmarks of a superpower, and says that we currently are a superpower, but in each of these four areas, whether it's military or economics or what have you, or culture, we're starting to wane on all of those fronts. And by 2040, unless we make some serious changes and we sort of get our act together, we're no longer going to be sort of shrinking in China's shadow, and we're not going to be enjoying the same freedoms that we currently enjoy. We're not going to enjoy the same prosperity that we enjoy. So I think that we're certainly on the same page as far as that goes, Rebecca. And where can people go to buy your book, Wealth Unbroken? What's the best place to get that?
It's everywhere. It's Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Target, Walmart. It's literally everywhere. So just go to any of those websites and put it in, and you'll have it.
All right. Well, Rebecca, you've been very generous with your time, and I'd like to thank you for being with us on the Power of Zero show.
It was really great to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Okay, folks, that is the end of my interview with Rebecca Walsor. Thank you for being on the podcast this week. Of course, if you're looking for any help to navigate any of these principles we talked about during our podcast, head over to davidmcknight.com. Happy to connect you with a member of our elite POZ advisor group. If you're a financial advisor looking to incorporate these principles into your practice, head over to powerzero.com and opt into the free 3-part video series. If you want to buy any of my books in bulk, head over to davidmcknightbooks.com, and you can mix and match titles and achieve bulk discounts. Of course, always appreciate a follow on Twitter. It's at McKnight & Co., at McKnight & Co. And we will look forward to chatting with you same time next week.